If you can't change your fate, change your attitude. Amy Tan.
I wanted to show you the setup that I temporarily have for the electric netting fence, because I wanted to talk about the solar fence chargers just a little bit. I have a new one that's coming. This is one I bought at a yard sale. I gave $25 for it. It was brand new in the box. The battery wasn't any good in it. It had sat in their barn for 8 or 9 years, they said. So I have a different type battery in it, but it works just fine. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit is the grounding on these systems. Now, I have one ground rod right here. Almost every time I've had trouble with electric fence, it's been because the ground wasn't good enough. The ground on any electric fence, whether it's a solar electric fence charger or whether it's plugged into a 110 volt outlet, you have to have a good ground on them. Now, most of the time what I'll do is I'll put a single ground rod in and then come over like I did here, and you need to come at least 6 feet apart. As long as you go at least 6 feet apart, then you should get a good ground. So what I do is I'll take an 8 to 10 foot piece of electric wire. I'll put a grounding clamp on the first one, and you can see this is where I have the fence netting hooked up to the ground right here. So I have one ground right here, and 8 feet over I have another ground rod. And then I just take a regular piece of electric fence, go across it, put another connector just like that on this end. You can see over here, I have another ground here. Now, when I first hooked this fence up and tested it with my electric fence tester, it was only testing at about 2,000 volts. Once I put the other ground rod in, 8 foot over, now it's testing at the 7,000, so it's going all the way to the top of the meter. So the problem was I didn't have enough ground. I always test it first, because if I can get by with just one ground rod, then I'm just going to put one ground rod in. But 9 out of 10 times up here in our soil type, and that depends on your soil type, our soil type is sandy and rocky up here. So I generally have to use 2 ground rods. So whenever you're setting electric fence up, whether it's a single strand wire electric fence or whether it's electric fence netting like this, you always want to test it with a meter and see what it's registering. And if it's not registering high enough, then go ahead and stick another ground rod in and see if that doesn't help you. Most of the time that'll help you with it. This is another solar fence charger that I have. This is a Parmak. It's a Solar Pack 6. I went back and looked. I purchased this thing in 2013. So it's been here for over 7 years, almost 8 years now. It still has the original battery. I haven't ever changed the battery. Last year I did order an extra battery, and I've got it in the shop, and every now and then I'll throw it on charge. These are 6 volt fence chargers, but this is a 25 mile fence charger. Now, the only problem I have had with it is the glass or the plastic on the front has gotten cloudy. You have to wet your finger a little bit to see it, but when you turn it on, you can hear it clicking, so you know it's working good. If it doesn't click real loud, then generally I'll take and wet this a little bit to where I can see the needle on it, and it'll be in the yellow, and then I know part of my fence is either touching weeds or it's touching metal somewhere. Now, the weeds generally do not bother this at all. Now, if you get heavy weed growth on them and it rains, then it'll start to short it out a little bit, and you'll have to go through and weed eat. But this is the fence charger that powers the electric fence. I have 2 strands around the chicken coop. I have 2 strands around the old chicken coop, which is this one that it's mounted on. And then I have 2 strands around the peacock coop and 2 strands around the pheasant coop. So it's powering quite a bit, but it works great. We haven't had any trouble out of it. Now, I did have to put 2 different grounds on this. What is it? Huh? Oh. I did have to put 2 different grounds on this one. There's one ground right back here, and there's one ground on the other side of the chicken coop. I put them about 10 feet apart. They say as long as you put them 6 feet apart that it's good, but I like to go 8 to 10 feet. That seems to work a lot better. But this thing will knock you hard. I accidentally got into it several times. Of course, any of you that have electric fences, you know how hard they'll hit you. But this will hit you really hard. I think it's around a 1.6 joules is what it is. So it's got quite a bit of juice to it. And we haven't had any trouble. You can see it's wore out. The paint's wore off it from the weather. I have it mounted on the south side of the chicken coop. So in the wintertime, when the sun drops low in the sky in the southern hemisphere, you can see right now, we're in December, and the sun's still shining on it. Every now and then I'll come through and just take my hand and a rag and maybe a little bit of water, and I'll wipe it off. But other than that, this thing has been great. If you're looking for a solar fence charger, I highly recommend these. I ordered another one for our electric netting fences, and I'm gonna hook it up on there, but I haven't had any trouble, hadn't had any trouble out of the switch out of it. It just hasn't given us any problems whatsoever. So if you're looking for a good solar electric fence charger, I highly recommend these. Now, I am not affiliated with them in any way. I don't know who owns this company. I don't know anything about them. I just know it's a good product. I don't do many reviews. The only time I'll do a review generally is if something's real good or something's real bad. If something's real bad, I'll do a review just so other people won't waste their money on it. And if something's real good, I'll do a review just because I know it's a good product. And this is one of those good products. So if you have any questions or comments about electric fencing or electric fence charger, please leave it below. And if you want to learn more about living off grid with wind and solar, organic gardening, growing your own food, preserving your own food, raising livestock, then click the subscribe button and the notification bell, and that way you'll be notified when we post new videos. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and thanks for watching.